Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thanks so much for dropping by this video. So, wow, I'm going to talk about some big things today. Fasten your seatbelts, you divine creation, you who are made in the image and likeness of God. So, um, very briefly, there's many different types of Christianity out there today. In my view, you can break them down into, fundamentally, you can break it down into one of two categories. There's faith alone or theology alone, and there's theology plus action. To make it very simply, there's belief alone or belief plus action Christianity. This is centered around what Christians talk about as salvation. The belief alone crowd, generally called Protestants or non-denominational Christians, and there's many denominations that fall under that, say that the only thing that matters is correct theology and some way, somehow accepting Jesus. That's the only thing that leads to salvation. The other group says, well, it's actually faith plus works. It's actually belief plus action. You can find this in the Catholic, Roman Catholic Church. You find this in the Eastern Orthodox Church. And then there's actually there's a third group that's popping up. And I think throughout history it's been there, that says, well, your salvation is dependent only on faith, but you also need to like do spiritual works, and you need to actually be active in your spiritual life. They're kind of a subset of the these are people who are into spiritual warfare and spiritual healing. Like, yes, I'm saved. Sure, I'm saved, but I need to be active. I can't rest on my laurels. I mean, you can rest on your laurels in that view, but that's not what life is about. You need to be spiritually active. So just a little background. Now, let's throw aside salvation. If you read the record that we have of what Jesus apparently said, he spoke very little about salvation. Mostly what he spoke about is taking action in a way of life. So let's just set aside salvation and for the moment. And so I'm just going to talk about my own experience, which was in different ways saying yes to the salvation through faith, but not having peace in my life. Like, not just not having peace, really suffering. And there's a lot of people in that boat who, have the correct theology, but they're really suffering, or their life doesn't feel satisfying, or in essence, they're just kind of waiting to die. And so that's why I've entitled this talk Pistos, which means belief. We could do a whole video on what Pistos means, but it's Greek. The simple definition is belief, but it's so much more than that. Maybe we'll talk about that. Pistos plus no praxis means practice, equals no pax. Pax meaning peace. Pax might be Latin. I may have mixed in some Greek and Latin, but I was going for the alliteration. So, and actually, I forgot the most important thing at the beginning of this video. Well, the most important thing was I said you were a divine creation, a child of God. Now, the second most important thing is, please don't believe anything I say. Please don't believe anything anyone says. Please don't believe anything you read. Find out for yourself if it's true. The only way I know to do that is to go deep within myself and listen to God and get a yes or a no from God. So, So, had the right theology, but I was still suffering. What was missing? Well, so we need to do a little history lesson here. Where did this idea of faith alone come from? Well, it came from Martin Luther. And so that was roughly the 16th century. And before that, there were a couple people right around that time with him, right around the 1500s, late 1400s. But before him, no one throughout Christian history said, faith alone, up until that point in Christian history. From day one, from Jesus preaching all the way up to Martin Luther, all Christians believed that our salvation, not just salvation, that our life needed to include spiritual striving, spiritual work, being of service. If you read the Gospels, that's clear as day. It's clear as day that this is Jesus's message. Yes, there are a few verses here and there which Protestants love to fixate on and then ignore everything else that seem to indicate like, oh, you just have to believe in Jesus and everything will be good. But there's also verses that say that you need to eat his flesh and drink his blood. There are also verses that say you need to do the will of the Father. And there are also verses that say, hey, if you don't feed the poor, you don't visit the sick, you don't take care of the elderly, you're going to hell. That's not the exact story, but so Protestantism cherry picks. The faith, if you want to believe in faith alone, first of all, believe in it. It's not my job to try and convince you otherwise. If that's your thing, then go do it. And this channel is probably not for you. But we need to be honest. And you need to be honest if you believe that. That to believe that, you have to ignore most of what Jesus said, and you have to ignore many, many passages which are straight up to the opposite of that. But more importantly, I'm just going to speak to my own experience. Life sucks without spiritual practice. Life sucks without serving. We are here, I believe, that I am here and we are here to grow spiritually and to help each other. That life truly is a spiritual journey. And this faith alone doctrine that Martin Luther came up, and by the way, Martin Luther was literally insane. The dude was literally nuts. And nasty. He was a very nasty person. And most people are following him. And, Adolf Hitler was a big fan of him. Nazi Germany was a big fan of him because Martin Luther hated Jewish people. Hate doesn't even come close. And a lot of his writings he was very popular in Nazi Germany for that reason. But that's another story. But it completely destroys the meaning of life. The meaning of life then becomes like, accept right idea in my mind, and then the meaning of life is complete. Wherein, if life is a journey that we have to engage in and participate in, then that gives life a purpose. So, but again, there's so much history and so much theoretical stuff. I keep trying to put it aside. My own experience is when I dedicate my life to service and connecting to God and growing, life goes good. And when I don't, when I just try and rest on theology, like, I believe in universal reconciliation. So it's like, okay, it's inevitable that I and everyone is going to be saved. But when I get sloppy or lazy in my spiritual life, then life really starts to suck and not be fun. It's written that Jesus said the truth will set you free. Well, if that's true, and I believe it is true, then if someone's not free, they don't have the truth. They don't have the full truth. Sorry, I'm not sorry. If that's true, the truth will set you free. And someone doesn't, and by free, I mean free, like at peace, happy, able to roll with the punches, to let things roll off you like water off a duck. So this channel is going to be about living what Christ taught, or the path of Christ. So I'm excited to dive in. And if you're suffering and your theology hasn't relieved you from that suffering, then do some prayer time. Go spend some time in nature. Go help a neighbor. Do something. Martin Luther wanted to take out the book of James, the most practical, the most instructive book in the Bible on living the teachings of Christ, because it contradicted his message. It contradicted his religion. Martin Luther started a new religion. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Protestantism is a new religion. Sorry. Like from a historical perspective, yeah, but that's another story. But yeah, he wanted to take it out. James, the brother of Jesus, Martin Luther didn't like what James had to say. So yeah, so if you're suffering, like, pray. And actually, that's what it says in the book of James. And if you're suffering, turn to God. My experience is theology alone, faith alone, belief alone makes me a dead person. It's just like, just kind of waiting to die and go to heaven. It's one of the reasons I thought of converting to Orthodoxy, because they combine faith and works. It's one of the few denominations that I found that I believe actually follows the Bible on this message. It's a combination of faith and works, and the necessity of both. Thank you so much for joining in. Actually, that's a lot of talking. Let's just have a little silent time, commune with. Oh, and before the silent time, if you disagree with me, and I'm going to put some guidelines for this in the video, in this channel, that's okay, but you have to do it respectfully. If you do it disrespectfully, I'm just going to block you. Like, you need therapy. You don't need to argue with someone online. And I've done it, and it's always been from a yucky, reactive place. So I'm not a therapist. I'm not here to deal with people's reactive yuckiness. So if you want to disagree with me, just and keep it short. Like, people will come here and write pages. I'm not interested. I listen to God. I read one or two sentences, and then I tune in, and I'm like, is this true? Yes or no? And then I reflect on it. Sometimes I'll read one sentence and I'll reflect on it all day. I don't need a paragraph. Yeah, and also, if you please indicate, like, oh, I watched this to the end. You can start your share with, hey, I watched this to the end. Because what happens is people will watch 1 minute and get triggered and then write something yucky and not. And like, you came to my channel. I didn't come to you. Like, it's happened so many times. People come on here and they want to teach me. And it's like, well, I didn't come to you for teaching. So just a few ideas. I'll share more about this later on. Thank you so much for joining in. Let's open up and let's take in some spirit. Let's take in some God juice, some God yummies. Opening to receive, breathing in the presence of God. Him in whom we live and move and have our being. That means the presence of God is all around us. And if Jesus is right, it's also within us. Yum, yum, yum. Everything tastes better with God. Sorry, that was a bit theoretical and historical. I always try and give the short version. And I hope this message leaves you feel inspired to go do. And it's not just do. It's with faith and seeking God's guidance for what to do. That's the ultimate. You want to know Christianity in one sentence? Seek God's will and do it with Christ's help. Boom. Take care, beautifuls.